I'm back with my chisel shaped clay shaper, and we're painting all of these yellows. You see we've blocked in a lot of the areas here. It'll all make sense later on. It saves a lot of very careful painting around, and we can be very loose with our wet into wet then to allow the shapes to blend right across this rather than having a jump from one side to another. Just painted the male blue, which is the bright blue one. Now we're going to have a go at the female, which is, in this case we're doing the underwings, and she's sitting on some ragwort flower, which is rather attractive. So I've already done my masking, as you can see. That's going to come off towards the end. First of all we're going to paint the butterfly, then the wet into wet background, and then we're going to go back into those flowers and finish those off at the end. So we'll just zoom in now on the butterfly itself, because that's where we're going next. We've got to paint the butterfly fairly carefully. I'm actually painting upside down here. I'm going to be using two brushes, two and a number 8 brush for this, and then a mop at the end. We'll start off with the slightly larger brush. We're going to just paint very, very carefully from the lights to the darks again, a darker tint. I've got to leave all these light areas to tint in afterwards, so I've just got to paint carefully now. I could put masking fluid into these small areas too, but I'm not going to. Now I can drop into this while it's still dark colour, and it's still a tad of the green coming into it just to bring it down, because it's quite a dull undercolour here. And it's very green into that edge there, so we'll let that come right the way around. It's quite green, so I'm going to take a bit of Viridian and drop that in. It'll be a little bit bright, so I'll drop some of the other colour back in a moment. And a wee tad of purple into little bits of it, just to give the texture that we need here. Coming down into the body, there's a small touch of ultramarine. Through there. And into the eye there. Into these areas, I want to go stronger yet. Use a little touch of purple now with my burnt sienna and darken up this whole front wing area here. Fairly carefully, we're actually drawing with the brush, so you see I've already drawn out quite a careful drawing, haven't I? And into that we'll add a bit of blue, a bit of ultramarine at the front here again to bring it, darken it down a fraction. Right the way through there. Work on this bit here now. There's some quite nice oranges going on. I'm going to take some cadmium orange. Into that I'm going to drop a little bit of rose in a moment. It comes down into other places here too. Rose into the cadmium orange, and it will just drop it in wet into wet again. Just softening it in with the clean water. Let it reach up and blend. They are light, but they're now toned down slightly. Make a colour for these darks. Don't need to go to a smaller brush yet. I'm going to use some Prussian purple, because they're quite cool and they're very dark. Just paint those in. Look how lovely and dark they look against that. A bit wet there, be careful it doesn't spread too far. As it dries out now, a little bit more of the detail, the veins and so on, are running through here. Right between here and these. Rest my hand on to make an arch to paint that line all the way down. We're painting wet over dry, which means we do get these hard edges. Little feathered edges, very carefully with the tip of the brush. So I haven't needed to go to my very small brush yet. I may need to drop any colour back into here. We can do that any time we like. And that's our butterfly about there. A little bit of cobalt violet of this wing, with a little bit of cool to soften that in. There we go, we'll let that dry, and we'll come back to our wet into wet. Right, now it's time to go on to the background. We've got the basic butterfly done. We're going to do the flowers afterwards. So first I'm going to wet all of the paper with a big oval mop. I didn't need to use my small brush after all. So all the way around. Be careful you don't go onto the butterfly, because you want this liquid to stop before it reaches the butterfly. Then onto that we'll drop our lighter colour straight away and work in wet into wet from very light to much darker as we go along. I've left that area there because I want to be able to wet into wet yellow in the centre there in a minute, so we get an out of focus blurry effect for the background. drop that in. Our little burnt sienna from the sap green, make a much warmer green. You can give the feeling of leaves and grasses going onto here a bit there. Let's drop in some much deeper, some ultramarine now with some burnt sienna in it to really get some darks going. There we go, not need much more than that. A tad darker but not much. Dry off. Now while that's drying, the centre part of this, we wanted to do a little bit of more yellow into that. So I'm just going to drop in some chrome yellow into there, where there isn't any. Dry my brush out again, and suck some of it away. Some of it's going over the masking fluid anyway. You can see how it leaves me a lighter yellow there. Okay, the paper should be just dry enough now to remove the masking fluid. So I prefer to use a bit of cloth with this. It lifts it a bit easier, it grasps it. Right, and that makes it ready for us now to put to our next stage of painting these flowers in. And I'm going to give it all one coat of Oriolian yellow to start. When that's dry, I shall work over the darker yellows afterwards. We can afford to make the effect of the stems by bringing some of that yellow across it anyway. Dry, then we'll work up our petals bit by bit with the stronger yellows. We're going to work on this area, still with our medium brush, and I'm going on to some chrome yellow. Keep it nice and clean. Chrome yellow's a little bit more opaque, and we're going to work a bit more thinly at first into this lighter yellow. Go darker into this yet in a moment, so nice strong vibrant yellow for the poisonous flowers of the ragwort, well, the poisonous leaves of the ragwort, so we get much stronger, darker, sharper edges. These are going to be much darker later as well, but I'll just paint them in at the moment. Paint this being a much more opaque paint. You can paint it on as thickly as you like because it's not going to show as transparent anyway. Chrome yellow. Put a little bit of rose with a lovely orangey red to drop in here. Nice and warm. And then we've got this one, which is right through here, the same sort of colour, and there are shorter petals coming closer inside, which are probably a little bit warmer. Burnt sienna under here, and just bring in some of the shadows on these petals here. Thin that down a bit. We could do a little bit of glazing over the petals here, just to give a bit more three-dimensional quality just there with those. Come back to a little bit of cobalt and come in with some blues in between these petals a bit. And this here actually is quite a strong green, so I'm going to come back to my dark bits in between. Don't let the brush get too dry, keep it fluid, and we're still using watercolour. Now we need to come up and dot the I's and cross the T's, so I'm just going to bring a little bit of purple in because purple is the opposite in the colour circle, and I reckon